everyone, Jeri Bellini here. Welcome to the tiny house and welcome to my channel, Aging Creatively and Gratefully. My name is Jeri Bellini and I am, well, when I came back to YouTube, I used to say I'm a 68-year-old YouTuber. Then last year I said I am a 69-year-old YouTuber. And in another month I'll be saying I am a 70-year-old YouTuber. Yes, I'm going to be 70 in August. And it's kind of been an interesting journey to get to being 70 and accepting being 70. Anyway, that's a sidebar. I do have a video called Discouragement. Disappointment is inevitable. Discouragement is a choice. If you're interested in knowing how I'm feeling about being 70, you can watch that video. I'll put a link in the description box below. Anyway, that was a sidebar. I am full of sidebars. So if you're new here, I just wanted to tell you a little bit about myself and, my view on living creatively. I believe we should keep moving and just play, okay? There's no rules here. I just want you to keep doing something with your hands, cooking, cleaning, gardening, creating, whatever. And just keep moving. As we get older, we really need to do that and join a community of like-minded people. The people here are amazing and so supportive, and I can't tell you how grateful I am. I am a big grateful person. I am grateful for something every day. I find something to be grateful for, and I encourage you to do the same. So I just wanted to tell you a little bit about myself before we start our actual project. And I also wanted to ask you if you possibly could share, if you like what you see here on this channel, if you could share it. Please subscribe, please comment. I'm trying to hit 30,000 subscribers for my birthday, which is in August. And if I do that by the end of August, I'll be tickled to death. So please keep that in mind. If you, like I said, if you do like my channel, please consider subscribing. All right, so now that I've wasted 2 minutes of your time, today's video is going to be on creating. It wasn't supposed to be a tutorial, but it did actually turn into one. I was just going to show you how I was making a scroll, and I started this last winter. I'm in Pennsylvania. If you're new here, I'm in Pennsylvania during the winter, and I'm in New Jersey at a beach down in Cape May in the summer, and that's where I am now. It's called the tiny house. It's a little park home at the beach in a campground. And so the whole house is my art studio. And I do a lot of creative projects on my channel because I want to encourage you and inspire you. But I also do talk about some important age-related things. So this week, or today I should say, I'm going to be sharing with you how I am creating a scroll. And if you don't know what that is, it's just a long piece of cloth that you embellish somehow and you wrap it around something. So as you watch the video, you'll understand what that is. And I started my scroll last winter in Pennsylvania. And Brian recently, that's my husband, and we have an Etsy shop. He recently got a bunch of gorgeous vintage wooden spools, and they inspired me. So I have a couple of scrolls going actually, but I'm going to share this one with you. Last summer, I did a video on how to piece little scraps of cloth together, like 6 or 7 different ways on how to stitch them together to make them look interesting. So I took one of the techniques from that video and I'll show it to you. You're going to see it in a minute anyway, and created this background cloth, which I am going to use for a scroll, and you'll see more of this during the video. So this is going to be like a little mini series, and each time I make a video, and I'm not going to make it the same time every week, and I apologize for that, but my life is such when I'm down here at the beach. My family's here, and I interact with the kids and my grandkids and stuff, and so I never know when I'm going to be able to do this. Like, for example, Brian was just here for 4 days. We ran around and did lots of stuff, so I can't promise you when the next video is going to come out, but I won't wait like four months or anything. It'll probably be a week or two. I'm going to take you along for the whole thing. So I showed you how to make the base. If you want to play along with me, I would love for you to do that. And then next time a video comes out, I'll show you what I'm going to actually put on it. And then at some point, I'll show you how I'm going to put it together. And I'm even going to experiment with some color and stuff like that. So I'm going to stop there because I can get pretty wordy. And we're going to get started on the scroll. And I want to thank you so much for being here, and I am grateful. Well, I'm finally getting ready to make my scroll, and I told you I would take you along for the ride. So before I get started sharing my thoughts on how I'm going to make my scroll, I wanted to show you these patches. I did these last summer, and this was, I think, I showed 6 ways maybe, or 7 ways of how to stitch little scraps of cloth together to create like these big pieces of cloth. And then you could make a bag with it or anything else you could think of. And so I really enjoyed creating these, and I'll put the link up in the window, and I'll also put it down below in the description box if you're interested in seeing this video. I feel like I called it Slow Stitching Patches or something like that. But I used so many different techniques to put the patches together, and it was really fun. And then I went back and embellished on top of them. And this one in particular is heavily quilted, slow stitched, whatever you want to call it. And then I added little pieces of seams and stuff. And I've had these particular ones sitting in my room for a while. I did make a little needle book with them, and I did do a video for that too. I'll link that too. And I really enjoyed this process. So I had these leftover pieces that I just came across the other day, and I really enjoyed this so much that I thought, let me make my scroll not exactly like this, but this will be a good start for me. So let me set these off to the side. It's been a few days, and this scroll is going to take a few weeks to create this and go through this process. I'm doing it in between other things. So, but I did want to come on and show you the little needle book that I made because I mentioned it in the beginning of the video. And I used the pieces, the scrap pieces, to make it, and they're super cute, right? So there is a video for this. This one has paper in between and cloth, and this one I think just has cloth, just a simple needle book. All right, that was just a sidebar. I wanted to show you that. Now here is the spool that I'm going to be using for my scroll, and it is 12 inches from this end to this end. So this center piece is about 11 inches. So what I decided to do is use a piece of feed sack as my base. So I ripped open a feed sack that I had. It's just plain. I'll show it to you in a second. And it's I think it's about 36 inches wide by the time once I ripped it open. So I think it's a good start. Maybe I'll stitch 2 of them together. I'm not 100% sure. I have to give this a little more thought and see how thick it feels once I start wrapping this, because you can see I don't have a whole lot of room. Well, on this end I do, to make a huge scroll. Anyway, and I get bored. So I digress. Anyway, so let me grab my feed sack and show you what I think I'm going to do. I'm just going to take a minute because I think this is interesting. This is a feed sack. I'm going to try to get it up to the camera so you can see the texture. It's different than a piece of muslin, right? It's just got texture, and they often, because they're very old, they have stains on them. So you see there's stains. A lot of times they'll have holes in them. And if you look closely, you can still see the stitch marks along the edge where the sack was sewn. If you're not familiar with feed sacks, I have a one right here that has not been taken apart. It's still in the sack stage. So see, it's got this stitching up the side. And they were used to hold grains or flour, stuff like that. And people would buy their grains and stuff in this bag, you know, like that. They would be tied and they would be full. And they kept them because it's usable cloth, and they would use them in quilts. And you can see this one has a lot of discoloration, and I love, the more the better. I love it when they have little holes in them too. They used them in quilting, they used them for clothing and all kinds of, you know, household items. So that's a feed sack. I love to sew with them because they're soft in a weird kind of way. That's all I can tell you. And you can see how they're woven. Like this one, the weave is a little bit looser. They're all different. I did sell a bunch of them on a live about a month ago. I picked them up at the flea market, and Brian just didn't have the time to list them in the Etsy shop. Well, he did get another pile of them. So if you want one, he's real busy right now. So we will eventually put them in our shop. But at the moment, if you want one, just send me an email. I'll pick one out for you and send it to you. If you don't like the marks and the holes and whatnot, they're not for you. Okay. Now, get your piece of cloth, and if you don't have a feed sack and you want to use a piece of muslin or something else. Oh, another sidebar about these feed sacks. They also came with printed patterns on them. And they were really desirable because the ladies would make dresses and clothing for their children with those. And I do have a stack of those as well. And at some point, I'll get them out and show them to you. So get your cloth. You can use a piece of sheet. You can use whatever. And get your spool. Rip or cut it to the desired size. Leave yourself a little bit of wiggle room there. And then use this as a template. So I'm not actually doing my scroll the way you might think. I'm not going to use this and collage on top of it. I'm going to make my scroll top, and then at some point I'm going to put the scroll top together with this. You can put a batting in it if you wanted to, wadding, batting. You can put a piece of flannel in it if you wanted to. There's so many different variables here. So I'm just going to take you along for the ride the way I'm doing it. And I hope you enjoy seeing that. And maybe you'll give it a try. And if you do, I'd love to see it. Make sure you choose your spool before you start making your foundation cloth, because you definitely want it to fit on there nicely like that. So mine is like perfect. And keep your spool handy when you're doing your layout so that you can keep checking it to make sure that it's going to fit on there properly. So shameless plug, we do sell these spools in our Etsy shop. We got quite a lot of them. We rescued them from a mill through a gentleman that was cleaning out for his uncle that passed away. And Brian cleaned them all. They're just absolutely gorgeous. He cleaned them all, and he used a Murphy's oil soap. So just look at that. They're just gorgeous. I'm really happy with them. And when you spend $35 in my shop at the Little House, you do get free shipping. So I wanted you to know that, because the shipping for these is probably about $8 or $9, I think, for one of these, because they're heavy. Anyway, let's move on to the next step. So first things first, you have to gather your supplies. So what you're going to need is some cloth, and because I'm using neutrals, I just laid some out here to see that they all kind of go together. I do use the right or wrong side. I use both sides of the cloth many times. And if you want to use colored, brightly colored cloth, I am going to do a scroll in bright colors as part of this little mini series further down the line. So if you want to wait for that video to come out, or you want to just be adventurous, do the same thing, just use colored cloth, go for it. But I would suggest that you iron these pieces. It's just easier to work with them when they're nice and flat. So get your stuff ready, iron them, just put them in a little pile, and we're ready for the next step. The technique I'm going to use for my background for my scroll is one of the techniques I spoke to you about that I have in the video that I shared the link. And the technique is whip stitching patches, little pieces of scraps together like this. So just let me set this aside for a second. So what I do is I lay out all my scraps of the colorway that I want to use. And the first thing I do, because I have a lot of scraps, I do press them because it's easier to work with them when they're not all wrinkled. You get a better look at them. So I press them, and then I start putting together sizes, like sizes, and I don't worry about what size they are. So these, for example, okay, now if I have a piece like this that's kind of wide for me, so I might go like this and then cut it here, right? So now I have another strip like that, and I just make a pile of them. All right, now I put that pile, I set that pile aside, then I start another pile of whatever. I just pick up whatever, and I would use something this narrow, and I just keep laying them out. So this one's a little big. I might start another pile with size like that. And I do rip some of the pieces up. You get the gist. So now I have all these piles, and I take them to the sofa when I'm watching television, and I do a whip stitch, and I create these strips. And these happen to be similar sizes, but I do all different sizes. And you see that one's not even straight. I don't even care. Some of these pieces are big, some are little. Sometimes I use the wrong side, and then I do the whip stitch. And I will show you quickly how I do the whip stitch. I do have a video in my 10-minute technique playlist of doing the whip stitch, but I'll just quickly go over that here. And if you want to see it more in depth, watch that video, and I'll link that above. All right, so I'm just going to quickly go over the whip stitch with you. As I said, you can go in my 10-minute technique and watch the long version if you want. But I'm going to take 2 scraps, and you just decide which side you want on the right side and which on the wrong side. I often use the wrong side of the cloth. I fold it over and I finger press it with my fingernail, and it's a scant 1/2 inch. So I do take a decent size seam when I'm doing this. And you're going to put the right sides together after you finger press with your fingernail, right? Hold it like that. I have the ruler there so I can show you. It's just it's just about a 1/2 inch, a scant. I'm going to use embroidery floss. I'm going to use black here so you can see what I'm doing. I put a knot at the end. I love to use black because it shows, and on the other side, and it really looks nice. In this case, I'm using white in my project because I wanted the thread to recede into the background cloth. So I'm using one of my Bowen needles that I love so much. This one is a size 6, and I have a knot on the end. I'm just going to go in underneath the seam, and you can work from the front to the back, or like that, or you can work from the back to the front. Everybody has like a comfort thing with that, so, and how you hold it and whatnot. But there's a little bite. You see the little bite that I took out of that? So you're going through the folds on both sides. Now I like to work from the front to the back, so I'm just going to take that out and go back. And you want to really start as close to the edge of your cloth as you can. I'm just for ease in showing you this. Now it tends to want to get caught over here when you're first starting, so I always flip it over like that and then just go. And I do try to keep my stitches evenly spaced, and I just go all the way across like that. Okay, all right, so that's all I'm going to show you for the whip stitch. If you want to see more in depth, you can look at that video. Now I want to show you what it looks like on the top side. Now you can see this is my scroll background cloth, and I'll get to this in a second, but you can see the stitches, and they're very primitive looking, and that is part of the appeal of doing the whip stitch, is that you can see the stitches on the top, and that's why I try to do them fairly evenly. I thought, wouldn't they make a cool base for my scroll. So here's the feed sack that I'm going to be using. And so I ripped the feed sack 11 inches wide. And I still have, you know, another piece. I'm going to hold on to that in case I want to add to the end of this. And I'm making these pieces. You can see they're different widths. Okay, so I'm just stitching, and what I like about this particular technique is when you do the whip stitch, what happens is your seams lay open and flat. And so I didn't want anything like too thick under here because my intention is to do some embroidery work on this. And I've been following Jennifer Clouston. I've been mentioning her a lot lately, and I did buy a couple of her books. She makes embroidery look so simple, and if you watch her for any length of time, you're going to realize that she's just using a very few stitches, which right up my alley. If I start spreading myself too thin and I'm using all these crazy stitches, I'll never remember what I'm doing. And so I like to keep things simple. So I'm going to try to take some of her stitches out of her book and do them on here. And I don't know what else I'll put on here. One step at a time. So I have two schools of thought with this. Layer them on top of one another and do an invisible base to hold them down. And then I'll have the raw edge. Or what I could do is go a step further with the whip stitch of the seams and just whip stitch these two together so that here it'll look like this. And as I'm looking at it, I'm more inclined to do that. Why, you're saying? Because this is going to be a lot happening here, right? But it's neutral, so it is somewhat quiet. But I don't want so much going on in the background that you're not going to see the work that I put on top of it. So I might just do that. I'm not sure. What I did decide to do is sew these pieces together. I laid them out, and they were lovely, but all the frayed edges, and I love frayed edges, I felt was attracting attention, and that's not what I wanted to do. So I did fold them under. Let me show you the underside. And stitch them. I whip stitched them. What I wound up doing is, just to make it go really quick, I wound up cutting my scraps to a specific width. So I did them all different widths. So some are 3 inches, some are 2.5, some are 3.5, some are 4, that kind of thing. But I cut a pile of them like that so that I could easily just pick them up and start stitching. Okay, so these are all going to fit together, even though some are small bits and some are wider bits. But you can see they're all going to fit together. Trust me, they're all going to fit together. And then I can create these strips. Now, after I created the strip, they're still, they're not perfect because sometimes they're ripped and sometimes they're cut. Then I lay them down on my grid, my mat with the grid. And then I took my ruler and I made sure that they were cut straight. So once in a while, I wound up cutting off the knot on the edge, and then I just went back and retacked down the edge. Now, why did I go to all this trouble? I did it because I want these strips to be straight, okay? If they were raw edge, if you want to go the raw edge route, it doesn't matter if they're straight. But if you want to stitch all the rows together, then you just want to make sure they're straight. I was just editing my video and realized I never explained to you when I put my basting stitches in, these basting stitches. And I think that's an important thing to share with you. So I made a bunch of these strips. So I have all these strips and I laid them down in what I felt was a pleasing manner. And I didn't want like 2 of these right next to one another. So I did fiddle around with it for a little bit. And once I felt like I was, fairly happy with it, I started to then attach these strips together. And so how I did that was, here's the strip. I folded the edge over. I pressed it. I'm going to say really pressing it is important, because you can do it with your fingers and just kind of stitch, but you might not, this might not be straight when you're finished. So I did press it over, and then I put the basting stitches in at that point. And I didn't do invisible baste. As you saw, I just did a regular big running basting stitch all the way across. And I did this to each strip, okay, so that it was easy to put these together. Then I stitched them together. Now I want to show you, you might notice, or maybe you didn't, there are no basting stitches going this way. That is not necessary to do. See? Flip them over. These seams stay perfectly flat. It was just when you put this long expanse of a row in, if you don't press it and baste it, it's not going to be straight, and you're going to wind up with this crazy wonky piece. All right, I hope that made sense, and I hope you found that helpful. Let's move on. All right, before I say goodbye, I just wanted to show you how far I got. So everything is stitched, everything is basted, and I stitched over the edge, and this will be the edge that goes around the spool. Okay, and I'm not even sure at this point how I'm going to connect it, but it doesn't matter for the time being. Let me show you the other end. And look how nice the back is. It's nice and flat. So this is the other edge, and it's ragged edge, and I'm just going to leave it like that because I don't know if I'm going to make this any longer or what I'm going to do with it. So I just wanted to throw out a couple of ideas before I end this video. And when I come back next time, I'll be sharing with you what I'm going to do on top of it. So for now, if you wanted to keep going with this, right, and make it twice as long or 3 times as long, you have a couple of different ways of doing that. So you could take another piece of cloth, just like a solid piece. You could use the right or the wrong side, fold it under like that, trim this off, and stitch this right together, and just add your next section of this. Okay, you could even fool around with another one of the techniques that I was doing in the video where I showed you like 6 or 7 different ways to sew cloth together. You could do a totally different way and connect it, but okay, I'm going off the deep end here. So you can do that, or you can sew a bunch of patches together again and just, you know, fold it under and connect it that way. You'd barely notice the seam. You might want to notice the seam though, because I was thinking, what if, so mine's like 36 inches long at this point, but just supposing you wanted to do some kind of theme work on here, and maybe let's just say you wanted to do 4 different themes. You could cut your, like you could do 12 inches and cut it, and then connect this as your border, right? So in my mind, it will kind of be like a concertina book now. It will have sections. If you did like 12-inch sections, it's a little more than 12 inches. So this would be one section, this would be another one, okay, like that. And say this one would be faces, and this one would be houses, and maybe the next one would be flowers and, you know, animals and so forth. There's a million different themes that you could use. So just give it some thought. Start to make your pieces. And as I was making my pieces, I was thinking about what I wanted to do with this thing, and I'll share that in the next video. So I just wanted to go over that stuff with you, and I think now I'm going to just tell you to play, right? Keep moving and play, and just get started with this if you want to join me, and I would love to see it if you do. All right, I think that's it for now. And I will come back. I'll try to come back every week and show you the next thing that I'm doing. And after, you know, these are neutrals. I might have mentioned this already because this video I've been working on for like 6 weeks, 8 weeks now. So forgive me if I'm repeating myself, but I know this is neutrals and not everybody likes neutrals. So I was thinking, I like colors too. So I was thinking, wouldn't it be fun if I did something similar in colors to show you how I might go about that if you're the type of person that likes bright colors. So I'm working on that too on the side. So I will have that. This is, like I said, it's going to be like a short series. So I'll have that at some point. And if you want to just experiment on your own, go for it and start right away with colors. I would love to see what you do. All right. Bye for now.